What's going on, everybody? Zera back with another video. Yes, I know that it's not a cigar cast, but I've got I had a lot of things going on this week. I was in, I'm gonna keep wanting to say Vegas. I was in LA this past weekend for the Final Fantasy VII Symphonic reunion concert. That was absolutely incredible. So, any of you that went out there, you're already gonna know about all this, but there was a lot of hype surrounding this. We were all thinking different things. Like, some people were thinking, oh, we're going to get a release date. Oh, we're going to get a new trailer. Oh, we're just going to have a really good time enjoying the concert before E3. And I'm pretty sure most of the people that went to the concert were also there for E3. Unfortunately, I could not do this. I didn't have enough vacation saved up because I had just started this new job earlier in the year. I didn't have enough vacation time for, taking basically the entire weekend plus a couple extra days for travel to, attend both the concert and E3. So my brother and I went to the concert. It was awesome. My brother was very, not pessimistic. He was just very grounded. He didn't want to get his hopes up. But I kept telling him, like, dude, we're going to get new footage and we're going to get a release date. I know it. I know it. I know it. I know it. Now, whether or not it's going to be a lot of footage, I don't know. But I know we're getting at least those two things. I didn't have any sources to back this up. It was just a hunch. It was really just, it felt obvious to me. Like, they're not going to do this concert and then have E3 literally be the very next day with all the announcements over Final Fantasy VII Remake and not have something to give the fans that came out for the concert. Like, they're going to do that. Just because we're the more ambitious types. We're the more, intrinsic fans that we're just going to go out there and do everything we could to see this concert. Now, as far as the concert goes, it was, I thought it could have been better. I didn't really care for how they did a lot of the clips and the montages. I will say this, though. The orchestra didn't play every song, which I actually loved. Like, some of the songs, like, I think it was like half and half. Like, half the songs were the orchestra playing, and then, like, including the solo pianist, which is probably the best part of the whole Deadgum conference, or the concert. I'm not even gonna lie. That pianist was world class. But to me, they also used the original soundtrack from the original game, which was awesome. I thought that was a really good touch. It gave the orchestra a chance to kind of regroup and take a break every once in a while, and they would show montages of videos for both the orchestra and also for the original soundtrack. And they nailed the emotions more often than not, but there were just a couple, like, they would go all the way up to, say, the like a certain point in the game, and then we'd have intermission, and then we'd come back, and then, like, we were seeing footage that took place way before what we just saw earlier. I'm like, I don't know, to me it would have landed a little bit better if it was all done in a chronological sense. I don't know. It's just me this is just me being nitpicky. The concert was amazing, don't get me wrong. It was worth every penny. Loved it to death. But whenever they announced, Kitase was going to come out on stage, you were like, oh, okay, we all kind of saw this coming. But at the end, when Nomura came out, the entire theater lost their minds, because I think at that point we all realized, oh snap, we're fixing to get something big. And sure enough, we did. They gave us the clip, and then it ended up showing us the release date, and I was probably the loudest person in that theater. I lost my mind. I remember my brother telling me after the fact, because I was like in his ear, like screaming, I told you we were getting a release date, I told you. And he, like, walked out of the theater with me, like not 10 minutes later, was like, dude, I almost punched you in the face. You almost blew out my eardrum, because I was just so hyped. I was so excited about this. And that being the highlight of the trip, when I get back, I go to work Sunday night, and that was an adventure in and of itself. That'll be in the next cigar cast. I'm going to talk to you guys about what happened on my return trip, because, oh my God, did I have to jump through like a million different hoops, because all my flights back home got canceled. So I had to jump through like a million different hoops, end up getting to another location as close as I could, and then drove like 6 hours with no sleep just to get into work on time for my 12-hour shift. It was horrendous, but more on that in the next cigar cast. So let's move on to E3. So they talk about, Bethesda, Xbox, you know, Cyberpunk, all these great things. I'm not a huge Xbox guy. I never owned an Xbox. To me, I'm PC Master Race with a dab of PlayStation on there, just for Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VIII. You know, the OG PlayStation games with a few more modern titles like Metal Gear Solid. So I was only really interested in E3. So I was checking all the highlights and headlines. And the Keanu Reeves thing was pretty cool. I thought that was a really nice touch. That dude is just, he's got to be probably the most down-to-earth celebrity you'll probably ever meet. And I don't have any experience meeting him personally. It just feels like his stage presence was just so cool. He was so chill. And he loved the fans. People were like hollering at him, and he was hollering back at him. He could just feel he loved being there. I think he just loves being, you know, at the center of attention and just giving people what they want, which is really awesome. I wish more Hollywood actors and celebrities in general acted like that. But moving past that onto actual Square's E3 panel they didn't pull any punches. I mean, from the word freaking go, they just dove right into Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I love. I can't stand these companies that do their entire panel and save like the one thing everybody came to watch or listen to or learn about and save that till the very deadgum last. That drives me absolutely bonkers. But thankfully it was late enough in the day. I was at work, it's true, but I had my phone going, I had my earpiece in, and I was kind of like halfway listening to what was going on leading up to the event. And thankfully by the time, you know, it was 9 o'clock my time when the event started, and I was like, oh, well, that's going to be late enough in the evening for things to die down during the shift, and I can, you know, actually pay, you know, 75-80% of my attention to, you know, the stream. And boy, did I get blown away by what they revealed. We got like an opening trailer for the event, which was really cool, which basically mirrored the actual introduction to the game. And then we got an actual trailer, which was the full version of the trailer that I saw at the concert. And then, you know, got the release date. And then they just talked about some things surrounding they gave us gameplay. We saw, in the extended trailer, we saw Tifa. It looked like Ares or Aerith. I piggyback. I really do. You call it whatever you want. But I think she's gotten reworked just a little. I got the impression that her face had been kind of worked on a little bit, and she looks even better than she did before, which I thought was impossible, but she does look incredible. And then Tifa is stunning as always. Exactly what I said in my previous video. She was not going to be censored. We were going to get basically the same thing we got in the original with a dab of Advent Children. It's exactly what we got. Matter of fact, if you take Advent Children's Tifa and you swap her black leather tank top with the white undergarment she had and just swap them and then took off her skirt, that's exactly what I said in my video. It's like, that's exactly what we're gonna get, and it's exactly what we got, and nailed it to a T. I love the combat. I love the fact that a lot of things in the combat is going to be optional based on what kind of playthrough you want to have and what kind of style you have as a player. That's a really nice touch. Really loving that. But all that said, what really blew me away came after E3, came after the event, came after all the announcements. Of course, once Square was done with Final Fantasy VII Remake, I shut it down. That was a huge mistake because they announced Final Fantasy VIII was finally getting a remaster. I literally cried. I was just surfing through the headlines and the highlights of E3 like around 2 or 3 in the morning after, you know, everything was over and said and done. I literally cried, dude. When I saw the headlines for Final Fantasy VIII getting a remaster, it's not a remake, it's just a remaster for PS4. I lost it. Dude, I have been begging for this. For years I've been begging for this. Because the port that Final Fantasy VIII got to the PSN store for PlayStation 3 was essentially just exactly what it was in the original PlayStation. No improvements. I was like, okay, that's cool. It allows me to play it on my PlayStation 3 without having to hold the discs around. That's great. That's a good touch. And then it came out on Steam, and that port was just god-awful. It's terrible. I can't stand it. Granted, I don't even use GFs in the game, but the fact that I can't really boost a GF efficiently is just terrible. Like, on the PlayStation 3 or the original PlayStation version, I can boost a GF up to like you know, north of 175, 185 at the very beginning of the game. And on the Steam version, I'll be lucky if I can get to 125. It's not designed very well at all. And even with mods, yeah, it can look gorgeous, but it just doesn't feel right. The trigger for, you know, Squall's weapon just doesn't feel right. The combinations for Zell's limit break just doesn't feel right. There's just so much about it that I just didn't sit well with me. And it's been years I've been begging for this. And there's been tons of video done by other YouTubers talking about the fact, why is Final Fantasy VIII like seemingly the bastard child of the Final Fantasy franchise? I don't know. To be honest with you, I have no idea. But this gives me an enormous amount of hope. They've held out on this for so long, and they're finally giving the fans, a lot of the fan base, what they've wanted. We've wanted a Final Fantasy VIII remaster, and we've wanted a Final Fantasy VII remake. What does that mean for the future? I don't know. But I'm willing to bet you that things like Final Fantasy X-3, or maybe even a Final Fantasy VIII remake, things like that are probably not beyond the realm of possibility, because obviously Square is finally listening to their fans and giving us what we want. So, moving back onto Final Fantasy VII Remake. When I got done like geeking out and weeping over the fact that Final Fantasy VIII finally got some love, I went and pre-ordered Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, I didn't pre-order the $400 or $300-something First Class Edition, because I actually looked. The actual like action figure, the Cloud motorcycle action figure, is actually the same price as the pre-order. It's like, so you're basically getting the game for free. Yeah, that sounds like a great deal, but I'm like, no, I'm not gonna pay for an action figure. I'm not a collector when it comes to action figures. I don't have any action figures. I have my Dragon Balls, I have my Buster Sword, I have my posters, I have my canvases, and I have my banners for Horde and the Alliance, and I have, of course, collections of movie posters that I actually love. I've got right here. I went and saw Godzilla in IMAX, and I got this just the other day when I went and saw it on opening night. Absolutely gorgeous and incredible. I'm gonna find a place to hang this up. Probably gonna go right here on this wall so you guys can see it. But all that said, again, not a big collector. I haven't ever really been a big collector. I'm not one of these guys that has like a wall, which is ironic because my parents do. When I was growing up, I had this massive wall of VHS tapes, and eventually it became DVDs, and now it's Blu-rays. Just a massive, I mean literally like a 25-foot wide wall, and probably from floor to ceiling is literally nothing but movies. Nothing but movies. All my friends loved to come over to the house when I was growing up. It's like, oh my God, there's so many movies. We can watch whatever we want. We have a marathon. I mean, and then we had it like, we literally had everything cataloged. That's how bad it was. Like, we had like westerns, thrillers, comedies, romantic comedies, you know, kids movies, or fantasy, sci-fi, just so much. It was ridiculous. It would take us, literally, we'd be like, hey, what movie do we want to watch as a family? And it would take 3 of the 4 of us to go downstairs and literally eyeball every single movie on that wall, and we would make a list of like a dozen different films. I'm not even kidding. This is it would literally take an hour to pick a movie because of our entire selection was just ridiculous, and it still is to this day. But for me, I'm like, all my stuff's on digital or Netflix or Hulu or iTunes, and yeah, I don't really need that. I'm not a collector. Like, when I went to the concert, there was this line of hundreds and hundreds of people lining up to get the soundtrack for the concert and remasters, and actually the OG soundtrack for Final Fantasy VII was there too. And I'm like, why? You do realize that you can order this stuff digitally through various stores, right? Like, that's not necessary. And then it dawned on me, I was like, yeah, but you can't knock somebody for being a collector. I was like, that's perfectly okay. It's not a sin to be a collector. But then I was talking to somebody else at the concert, somebody we were just chilling with leading up to the, once they finally opened the theater and we were able to get in and kind of check things out, which was really awesome, but we still couldn't get seated for like a half hour. So I was talking, me and my brother were talking to this guy, and he made a really good point. He's like, I'm an audiophile. It's like, my literal job is an audio engineer. I can't stand digital downloads because their quality is nothing compared to the things that are on the actual hard disk. And I'm like, yeah, I feel you, but I'm not an audiophile. I'm not an audio engineer. I don't really hear the difference, to be honest with you. Music is music to me. That's just me. Please don't harangue me in the comment section. But the guy made a good point. He was like, I still am not going to sit in line for an hour and a half trying to get my hands on a physical copy of a disc when all I have to do is just go on Amazon and just order the disc. It'll be on my doorstep in 2 days. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. But then there was also the side effect that Nomura was there, Kitase was there, Maximian Dude was there. It was awesome seeing him, although I purposely decided, I mean, I saw him, I was seated not too far down from him, but I was like, you know what? That dude is probably getting harangued by so many people at this event. He was with this girl, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go over there and bother him. Dude's got my respect. He's an amazing content creator, and I'm not going to harass him or take any time away from this obvious, fantastic event. He came here because he's a huge fan of the franchise, and I understand that he probably just wants to be left alone because he probably glad hands enough people at places like E3 and so on and so forth. I wasn't going to bother him. I wanted him to enjoy his time, and I left him in peace. But that being said, he was there. So if you were that kind of person that was like, hey, I could get this disc or CD or vinyl and have, you know, I could have Kitase, Nomura, and Maximian Dude's signature on it. Not going to lie, that would be a pretty BA thing to have in your collection if you were a collector. I wouldn't mind having that myself. But again, not going to go out of my way to get that. Just not. So, anyway, all that said, whenever I looked at the pre-order for Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I went ahead and ordered it, I started dissecting what was in it. And you know what I realized? This is part 1. I went back, I had to go back and rewatch Square Enix's event over and over and over and over and over to really nitpick what they said. This is still a multi-part game. Part 1 is Midgar, whatever you want to call it. However you want to pronounce it. I pronounce it Midgar myself, but I understand that Midgar is the widely accepted pronunciation. They confirmed that Part 1 is all Midgar. I lost my mind. If you've been watching my videos for the last month, you know that is all I have been wanting. That is all I've been wanting since day 1. I want Part 1 to be nothing but Midgar. I want there to be nothing but like live interactions with Sephiroth type flashbacks, and that is exactly what I've been saying. I've called this from day 1. They're doing everything I wanted them to do. It's like Square Enix is in my brain, and they're like, you know what, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. This guy knows what he's talking about. But in reality, they just know what the fans want. Finally, we're getting something, a product that the people who are working on it are actually passionate about the project because they've been tied to it for 22 years. If you factor in pre-development of the project, probably closer to 25 years. These guys are even more diehard fans of this game than we are. And they're giving it every bit of intricate detail and just love that it deserves. That being said, Part 1 being all Midgar, it is 2 discs. Look at the pre-order. Final Fantasy VII Remake is 2 Blu-ray discs. And this is Part 1. I want people to like let that seep in their brain for a minute. I mean, just Midgar alone was what I was hoping for one game on one disc. I'm telling you, Square, there was a guy who was streaming the event. I don't know who it was. My brother was telling me about it after the fact. And the guy made a point. He was like, forget Game of the Year. This may be Game of the Decade. I want to take that a step further. This may be, if they play their cards right, and you factor in everything from Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, if there is going to be a Part 3, we don't know how big this is going to get. Maybe we'll get a Q&A sometime around the actual launch of Final Fantasy VII Remake that will solidify that information. This is going to be, in my opinion, the best game of all time. It's already the most efficient game ever made because price per dollar, like per gig of data for this game blows any other game in the world out of the water completely. I mean, you're talking 2 Blu-ray discs chock full of gameplay and cinematic cutscenes and God knows what else. So much level and attention to detail, I can't even begin to describe how excited I am for this project. I've pre-ordered it, I have it. I got the, not the first class edition, but I got the deluxe edition, which is going to have the steel back holder. It's going to have the hardback art book, the 2 DLC summons, just a whole bunch of extra stuff that's going to be absolutely incredible to own. The soundtrack, I'm going to love that so much, and it's going to be a very prized collection, or prized piece in my collection, which is very limited, as you probably realize now. Nobody saw this coming, man. I sure didn't. I mean, a lot of the things that I was hoping for, I wasn't holding my breath on. It was one of those, like, we're just going to have to wait and see. And now, all of a sudden, it is, it's all been confirmed, man. This is blowing my mind. But can't talk about this all day, so moving past Final Fantasy VII Remake, moving past the concert, moving past E3, let's talk about the ultimate World of Warcraft Classic guide. I made this guide for a friend of mine. Some of you may know him. He's a streamer and a content creator named Swifty. I haven't known Swifty too terribly long. We're friends, not necessarily close friends, but I've gone to the gaming house before, and I've spent time with him in person, and I'm one of his bigger supporters. And I plan on going to the gaming house in the near future whenever he gets the new one set up. But he was talking to me the other day, and he asked me a favor. He's like, man, I got a great idea. Because I'd sent him a guide previously, a very limited quantity and capacity, and he's like, you should do this for every class, and we can put it on my channel. I can advertise your Twitch page and the fact that you did it, and point people to you and your content, your Twitter, whatever. But this would be a great thing for the community to have. It'll get a lot of eyeballs on me, it'll get a lot of eyeballs on you, and it'll be a win-win. And I was like, you know what? Awesome, dude. And I'm not gonna lie, I've actually put content out there for this guide. It's easy for you to use. It's easy for you to, dissect, interact with. It's a PowerPoint, Google slideshow, completely interactive. Click, feedback, Hearthstone to get you back to the table of contents. Breaks down every spec for every class, with the exception of 2, Prot Paladin and Boomy Druid. Mostly because those are not very popular in vanilla, and I told people that if there's enough feedback and if enough people want me to do those, I'll do them. But for the most part, people are going to stick with their rogues, the priest, feral druids, tank druids, so on and so forth, resto druids. Nobody's really going to dabble with prot paladins. I know that if I were telling Tally this, he would probably disagree with me, but Tally is an exceptional player. And he's played the Paladin and various other tanks for so many years. The guy grew up playing World of Warcraft vanilla, just like I did, and a lot of other people. So it's like, I don't know, like telling somebody that is passionate about this project that they can't play a class because it's no good. Passionate players will make that class and make that spec great. They always will. People used to say the same thing about feral druids back in true vanilla, and then over the years, people have discovered, oh my gosh, if you have certain amount of gear, or you certain kinds of gear, like for example the manual crowd pummeler from Nomergon, if you farm the mess out of that, feral druids can do a ton of DPS. It just takes a lot more effort, a lot more work, and you have to get really creative with it. So I'm sure prot paladins and boomy druids could do the same thing with a similar take. I just don't have that information handy, and I don't know anybody that does. So if you know somebody that does, or you have that information handy, please get back with me. I would love to update the guide, and I update it daily. People message me on Twitter, tweet at me at SaltyZera and say, hey bro, this guide is amazing. I think you nailed it, but there's like one thing you need to tweak here and there. And people in my own guild, by the way, I've got my own guild. If you want to be on a PvE server with dedicated, mature players that have lives outside of World of Warcraft and understand the need to balance real world life, but also have the ambition and drive to push to clear content as it releases and try to aim to be top 5 server first. If you're interested in that kind of thing on a PvE server, reach out to me, tweet at me, let me know, and I will get you the information to apply, and we can check you out and see if you're going to be a good fit. But after talking with my fellow guildies and other people, hundreds and thousands of even eyeballs on this guide, people have given me really fabulous feedback, and I'm updating it daily, and it's going to get even better. I spoke to Swifty recently, and I told him, I was like, hey, I'm going to do this. My next project that I'm going to do is going to be a dungeon guide. I'm going to go through every dungeon that's going to be released upon launch of Vanilla, or launch of Classic rather, and I'm going to break down every single dungeon. Now, I don't know to what level of detail I want to go into. I certainly want to go over bosses, boss strategies, and loot tables. That's a big one. I definitely want to have maps of every dungeon with keys to let you know when and where things are and at what times, and even give you different layouts and mappings and give you an idea of what routes you can take depending on what you're going for. If you're farming for a specific piece of gear and you only need to clear like a third of the content in the dungeon so you can run out and reset it ASAP, that's going to be there. The only thing I don't know is, do I want to do like various guides for various comps for your group, like if you have 2 mages or 2 rogues or whatever? I don't think I'm going to go into those that deep. I really don't think I'm going to. I might make nods at certain things, because there are certain dungeons where having 2 mages or 2 hunters or 2 rogues are more viable than others, but, you know, because rogues can sap, mages can sheep, hunters can kite and, you know, freeze trap, so on and so forth. Warlocks can banish. There's so many different idiosyncrasies with different comps, but I might just make a nod to those, but just stick to maps, keys, boss strategies, and loot tables. That's probably going to be the big 4 that I'm going to stick with. But that is an enormous task to take on. So that's probably going to take me more than a couple of days or even a week like the previous guide did for the best in slot gear. So if that's something you guys are interested in, be looking forward to that. That's probably going to take me months to do. Thankfully, we have months, 2 months, a little over 2 months until Classic comes out. So hopefully by then I'll have that done. But I will certainly have all of the, you know, easier lower level dungeons, probably up to and including BRD, will be done. But stuff like Ubers, Elbers, and places like that are going to take a little bit more time. But just because they're so much more vast in content, maybe even places like Marlden or Dire Maul, especially. Dire Maul is going to be a huge one, but we don't need Dire Maul to start with. And there's like 3 or 4 wings to Dire Maul. I think it's 3. But anyway, all that's to come. But with that being said, guys, I've decided officially that I will be dual boxing a hunter and a priest. I was thinking about dual boxing 2 hunters. That was my initial idea, but I was like, you know what? Having to balance feeding 2 pets, carrying around 2, you know, bags of ammo, not very self-sufficient. I was also thinking, but then I was thinking mage, because it would save me money on food and water, and any food that I do pick up from mobs, I can just feed it to my boar or my bear, because they basically eat anything and everything in sight, which would help me manage food. And then I was like, but then I started thinking, I was like, yeah, but then there's the whole issue with LOS, because the mage has to be facing its target for casting any of its spells. I was like, I really just need a dot class. And I was like, okay, Warlock, great. And then I was like, wait a minute. While Warlock would be great, because I would have Soul Stones, if either one of us die, I would have Hell Stones, I would have another pet to, you know, tank, you know, 2 adds instead of just 1. Even that seemed a little bit more daunting, because there's way more class quests for Urlock, especially early on, to get your demons. And I didn't want to mess with that because I don't have any experience with that. Now, if I got Classic Beta, this wouldn't be a problem because I could map it out and figure out which way would be best for me to go. But then there's also the issue that dawned on me, that's kind of solidified the fact that I'm not going to be able to do Warlock, is because I'm going to be a Dwarf Hunter. It goes without saying. And while I believe dwarves can be warlocks in vanilla, I'm not 100% sure on that. Well, actually, no, I don't think they can. I think dwarf warlocks came later. I know that dwarf priest is going to be a thing. And I know that dwarf priest is an enormous feather in your cap for raid content. So if I get to where my hunter is like fully decked out in giant stalker or dragon stalker, and I've dabbled in my priest enough to get him geared enough to get into one of those places early on, I'm like, you know what? Let me get on my priest. Let me heal a little bit, because I do have experience in more recent expansions healing, granted with the druid, but you know, once you've learned how to heal, it doesn't really take a lot more to adapt to another expansion or another variation of the game. Granted, vanilla was probably the most in-depth when it came to healing, because you had to use different levels of spells, different ranks, manage your mana pool better. There was a lot of things. Plus, a lot of spells were not, you know, heal over time effects like we have now. So you really had to be careful that you didn't overlap other heals. Now, granted, that can be managed by the raid leader saying, hey, certain healers heal certain groups. But I don't know. I think I would rather have the priest in my arsenal at level 60. Now, granted, all my other alts that I'm going to do are going to be 35, because I'm only getting them to 35 so I can get, you know, artists and professions. They're all going to be alchemists. They're all going to be, what was the other one? Alchemist and tailors, because I'm going to be farming up Mooncloth and Arcanite bars as fast as humanly possible. The way I factor it, in an 8-day period, I could farm up, what is it, 4 sets of cooldown for the Arcanite bars across 8 characters, so 8 times 4 is 32. So I get 32 Arcanite bars a week, and then of course the Mooncloth is 2 days instead of 4, so you basically half the amount you get in an 8-day period. So I get, you know, 32 Arcanite bars, and I get, you know, 16 Mooncloth a week in an 8-day period. So that's going to be pretty awesome. It's going to be pretty ballin'. I'm going to make lots of money doing this. In dual boxing the priest and the hunter, the priest doesn't have to be facing a target in order to cast Shadow Word Pain on it. It just has to be within LOS. Same thing for Shadow Word, or excuse me, you know, Power Word Shield. Same thing for Power Word Fortitude, so on and so forth. Renew, the list goes on. So it's going to be a lot easier to dual box. I don't have to be paying attention to exactly where the priest is facing. As long as there's nothing obstructing him casting the spell on a target, not going to be a problem. And I've already mapped out the hotkeys. That way I fit within Blizzard's TOS of saying, okay, you can only have one action per input. So, like, for example, button number 1 on my keyboard can't do an action both for the hunter and for the priest. That's the only rule you have to abide by. But there ain't nothing that says you can't have a, you know, cast sequence or various buttons that you can push at the same time. That's okay. So, like, for example, if I wanted to put, you know, aim shot / auto attack or auto shot from my hunter on scroll wheel up, and then turn right back around and put, you know, renew, put a cast sequence macro that does renew followed by Power Word Shield followed by a Shadow Word Pain on, you know, at Zera, assist, whatever, all on one macro, that's not against the rules. A macro is just a spell that performs a cast sequence that allows me to cast various spells with one scroll. So there's ways around it. There's ways around that. I'm not mapping the same key to multiple tunes. I'm pushing a button on the keyboard, and I'm also performing an action with my scroll wheel at the same time, which allows me to perform both actions simultaneously, no problem. So there's benefits to it. There's ways around it to stay within TOS, and I'm gonna be doing that. It's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna love it. Again, the only downside is gonna be having to basically buy water for my hunter and for my priest. Now, granted, if I get me a decent wand, then, you know, priests get that 25% damage increase to wands pretty early on. So if I manage that and I also get Spirit Tap in the Shadow Tree, then it might not be so difficult to manage my priest mana between pools. Plus, with my hunter and my priest working together, it's going to take a lot less time for targets to go down between, you know, opening up with an aim shot, followed by my pet attack, my hunter's auto shots, my priest Shadow Word Pain, and then wanding. Targets are going to go down pretty quick. And my pet's already going to be so tanky because he's going to be Beast Mastery spec while leveling. And then you factor in a shield and renew on him. It's going to be pretty redonkulous, especially if he's a boar or a bear, which I know he's going to be because they eat everything in sight. And they have a higher armor count and higher health pool. So it's going to be nice. Well, with that, guys, I think I'm going to wrap this up. We talked about everything from the concert to E3, Final Fantasy VII Remake being 2 discs. It's incredible. I've pre-ordered. It's going to be amazing. And then, of course, Classic. I've kind of solidified what I'm going to be doing for Classic. And I've also let you guys know that the guide's coming out in the future. Don't know how long it's going to take but we're going to piece it together piece by piece. By the way, the stream is going live probably, I'm trying to remember what the exact date was going to be. I think I solidified it as being June 26th, which is 2 weeks from today. It's exactly 2 weeks from today. So 2 weeks from today, the stream will be going live. And unfortunately, I do not have beta access for Classic. I wished I did. And if I did, you guys would be getting lots and lots of fantastic Hunter content. But unfortunately, we need to just focus on what we do have access to, and we do have access to information. We have access to various other guides, and we're going to build this guide together. Guys, come on by, stop by the stream. We'll be doing a Let's Chat stream, and we're going to be talking about guides. We're going to be talking about piecing together the dungeon guide, piecing together strats for leveling, pass, and everything else. So with that being said, guys, I love y'all. Stay kind in other words, always. Be salty, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Zera out.